Welcome back. Good news, I didn't give up on this yet. There's at least going to be a part 2, which you're currently watching. Last week we pulled the engine out of this nice Yugo GV, and now this week I'm going to try to attach the Harbor Freight Predator engine to the Yugo transmission. I've ordered a nice assortment of Chinese belts and pulleys and shafts from Amazon, so that should give me a start on what I need. It's all just kind of drawn up in my head, and we'll see how close this actually comes to kind of ending up like the idea I had. So I'll show you what I got. I did what anyone did, and I went on and ordered some Chinese industrial supplies for my project. These pulleys were nice enough to come with this smiling dog to thank me for buying this pulley. Not really sure what's up with that, but yeah. So I got some double groove pulleys. This is going to be like, I guess you'd call it the primary drive off the engine, is these 2 pulleys. I figured I wouldn't do any reduction there. They're both the same. I think they're 4 1/4 inch or something like that pulleys for a 1-inch shaft. Then I ordered the just mentioned 1-inch shaft. This is a go-kart axle. Once again, it has a keyway. It has these amazingly poorly cut threads on it. And the fun part is that when I'm trying to put any of this stuff on here, this axle's like slightly oversized and I have to sand everything. So, you know, good quality. Anyway, I got some 1-inch pillow block bearings that had bad reviews, but they were cheap. So they won out, because I think 4 of them were like $18. So I'm sure these are gonna be great. And then I got some shaft collars. So I'm not sure how this is gonna work yet, but this should get me started. I'm planning on using a chain as like the secondary drive to the transmission, but you'll see why I'm using belts on this side if this pans out. So my first task is going to be to find something to mount the engine to here. I have some miscellaneous metal by my trial and error last video with various pieces of wood. The engine actually has to sit up pretty good. So I think I'm just gonna build something right across this like radiator support, if you wanna call it that, and then back. I just have to find some way to brace off the firewall, because unfortunately that runs like directly into where the rack and pinion mounts. So I'm gonna have to make something above or below it, I'm not sure yet. So we'll see how it kind of works out with the supplies that I have. So before I make the engine cross member, I was fiddling around with the transmission, and although it looks straight in there, it's not. I actually noticed that the CV axle is rubbing on the cross member there, but all the transmission mounts are in place. Then I noticed if I just pry this over to the driver's side a little bit in the front, everything straightens out. So I guess I'm gonna need to brace the transmission. Plus I was thinking too is that I don't want the transmission to rock when it's like under load, and then throw any of the pulleys or chain out of alignment and make it throw stuff, so I should probably solidly mount the transmission. I think I'm just gonna run a brace from this cross member up to one of the old bell housing holes here, and then between the other 2 mounts, that should keep it like stationary. So I think I'll do that first and get everything like situated as far as the transmission goes, and then make the motor plate or cross member or whatever you wanna call it. So here's what I came up with. So there's the brace I made for the transmission right there. I put a little spacer in between that I cut to fit. I don't know what length is, about an inch. And then I hogged that hole out a little bigger so I could use one of the factory bell housing bolts that went up here through it, because those are one of the starter mounting bolts, but it was good enough. And it lined up and I had transmission straight. And then here's what I made for like an engine cross member. It's just this C channel I had laying around. I think it might be old pallet racking or something. I'm not even sure. But just put some angle iron on the end. Put another piece of the C channel back there. It grows from that transmission cross member over. And then I have more C channel I'm going to run up here to like the strut tower, or whatever you want to call that there. Side of the engine bay, I guess. And I was going to nut and bolt it, but I think I might just weld it all in. Screw it. But that should be a good platform for the engine. And then I can put the pillow block bearings up there. I'm not sure if I'll slot them or slot the engine like for the adjustment. But I don't really want to mount the engine or anything yet until I have that input shaft situation figured out. So I think that's going to be the next step, is to get that machined or whatever the hell I have to do, because everything else has to line up straight with that. So I think that's going to be the next thing. Well, it's been like 2 weeks, but the part finally came. I went to 3 Tractor Supplies like last or 2 weeks ago, whatever this was. And every one of them, their entire aisle that has this stuff in it was missing. It's just a little hub that you weld a sprocket to, but every aisle was empty. Every sprocket missing, every one of these missing, every chain missing. So I wasn't really thrilled. So I ordered them on Amazon, and then the post office lost them. And then I was gonna order more, but then they just magically appeared. But whatever, I have it now. So now I can continue working on this. But in the meantime, I did make something here. Let me show you this 12-inch shaft. Now, like most shafts, it's much smaller in person. This was like the secret to the whole project to me. It's like the flux capacitor is the secret to time travel. So what this is it's the center of the original Yugo clutch, which is welded to a hub for my Hyundai Sonata for some reason. And then that is welded to a 1-inch go-kart axle, which has a, keyway, that's the word, a keyway in it. Because I don't have a lathe or any skill, I took this to Edward's house, who owns 10th Gate Tattoo in Palmerton. So there's his product placement. And he whipped this out on the lathe for me. So anyway, yes, this was the one piece I didn't have the skill or knowledge to make, and now it's made. So the center of the clutch disc has splines on it which mate to the input shaft of the transmission. So when you spin this, in theory, it goes through the transmission like the original engine did and should put power to the wheels. So now what I have to do is I have to make a plate or a stand or something which will secure this to this transmission cross member. This has to be able to take a sideways load now from a chain. So this will hold this shaft steady so that all the force is not being pulled against the input shaft of the transmission. Well, here's the finished whatever. It's probably slightly overbuilt because that angle iron I used for that support is 1/4 inch. And then you'll see there's a sprocket on it now. I installed that off camera so you wouldn't have to see me beat it on with a hammer, because I guess the Amazon 1-inch axle is slightly oversized because none of this stuff fits on it properly. But that's an 18-tooth sprocket. It's one of those like weld-on ones. Like I said, that was the piece I was waiting for 2 weeks. And I'm just basically gonna go backwards here, because I think this was the most complex part of the project, was getting it to mate to the factory transmission. So I'm gonna work my way back towards the engine. So the next step is gonna be to make a jack shaft that goes right there with another sprocket that goes to there. Here's the next part in the series of this mousetrap, is this jack shaft. It's the other half of the Amazon go-kart axle that I bought. And then 2 more pillow block bearings, a double groove pulley, and that's a 16-tooth sprocket, and that's an 18-tooth sprocket. So I'm gonna gear it down like a little bit to try and give it a little helping hand. I left the threads on this end because I think I'm gonna put the nut that belongs in there that would hold like the hub on the go-kart to keep the shaft from walking through. I don't think it will anyway, because I pretty much have to hammer all this stuff onto the shaft for some reason. Like, everything fits tight on this shaft. I don't think it's the other things, because every single thing does it. So that seems to be the common denominator here, that's the problem. But I'm gonna drill holes and put bolts on the other side and weld them to it, kind of like I did with that, so I won't have to mess with like a wrench and a ratchet if I have to fix it later on and have like nuts falling off the bottom of the car and everything. Well, here it is, all said and done. Figured I didn't really need to show the whole thing in a nice montage because I just drilled 4 bolts, so it wasn't anything too exciting. But I have a few of these tightened down, chains on there. This is a 40 series chain. Like everything else, came from Tractor Supply for the most part. When I got this all together, I lined up the chain by eye this way, but it kept binding up and I couldn't figure out why. Then I wasn't really thinking, I guess I wasn't thinking 3-dimensionally, because either this plate or the trans is tilted. So it was actually like twisting like this. So I put 2 washers under just this pillow block. This is still on the metal there. And that seems to be good now. Now the thing spins with no issues. And if I have to tension anything, I can still push this back. I drilled the hole so that right now it's actually slid all the way forward. So I'll have about a 1/4 inch of adjustment if the chain starts stretching or whatever. And the reason I cut the ends off the washers was for that reason, so that if they go against this, I can move it. If I would have left the washers whole, there wouldn't have been any adjustment there. So that was the reason for that. But I think now it's finally time to mount the engine in here. So it's handy and not handy, not needing an engine hoist. I mean, that's quicker and easier, but at the same time, it's not that easy. Maybe this will help everyone figure out the rest of my plan here if you couldn't visualize it before. But I took the chain off because I can't get the belts on. But I'm gonna run 2 belts, and then I'm gonna have some mechanism that tensions them as a clutch. That part I haven't figured out yet, but it's gonna be roughly like this. I'm gonna have to somehow mount the engine in there straight. It looks pretty good with the old eyeball, but I gotta watch over here because I wanna have some clearance to that strut tower with the pull start. You can tell there's not much, but it doesn't fit in here too bad. It's funny, it actually takes up a lot more of the engine bay than you would think, being it's a single cylinder. Like it pretty much fits front to back. It's not too much room. It's like maybe an inch or two each way it can go, but that's pretty much where it has to be. I remember too, I never actually like ask anyone to like or subscribe or hit bells and other things they want you to do. Do all those things, it'd be great. I think it helps me out, or at least appeases the almighty algorithm. But yeah, I think that's it for the Yugo for this week. So next up will be engine mounting, clutch, starting in the car, having it not work, and having parts hit the ceiling. So I'll see you then for that.